We are now also recording. All right, let's get going. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I know this is a busy time of the year for everyone, and there's lots of things that you could all be doing with your time, but is it refreshing and encouraging and hopeful, inspiring to know that so many people take this topic so seriously to commit your Thursday evening to join us and discuss analysis and solutions and collaborations and try to figure out what we can do to save the lives of our folk here in Chicago and elsewhere. So thank you all for being here. Um, while we getting started, if you wouldn't mind checking in, letting us know where you're coming from, if you represent any organizations, please, we can start to do the networking immediately. We ain't got to wait for anything for that. If you represent anything that you would want to share, if you have any events coming up, if you have any websites or Instagram links or Facebooks or Twitters, you can start to introduce yourselves and share in the chat. So we will be having a conversation on multiple levels. We got some artists, we'll be playing some music and sharing some slides and having live discussions, and we'll be inviting the community to speak at times. And we have some fantastic brilliant minds and hearts to share their expertise with us. But the chat is a live space too, so please feel free to begin dialoguing there, sharing, any links, any resources that you have, and that can begin right now just by introducing yourself and your organizations and who you here repping tonight. And before I say another word, I would like to ask for the permission of my elders to begin this presentation, this town hall, this forum.
You may begin, brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nervous doing that on Zoom. You got to hope that the elders know how to find the mute button to then give the permission for the program to begin. But we got some sophisticated, some savvy elders in the space. I appreciate that. Again, we're gonna start in proper order. Like, this is Zoom, this is technology, and it's distant, but it's close because we African people, and we all over the place, and we connected wherever we are. So in honor of that, we want to begin in proper order with an acknowledgement of our ancestors, to invite them into this space, where we are, in the sanctuaries and the sacred spaces that you've created for yourselves, where you're located, but also in the connected space that we create just by deciding to commit to this time and this space and this work. So in honor of that, we'd like to ask Mama Afua, Dr. Derise Tolliver, to begin this discussion by invoking and inviting our ancestors to guide us, to join us, to be with us as we figure some of this stuff out. Mama Afua.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Santi Sana, Midasi Pa. Thank you, Bart, for that introduction to libations, and thank you, elders, for giving us permission. There's an African proverb that says it is important and critical to start correctly, and so we always do that. So I thank you, Obari, for that. With this water filtered of impurities, we pour libations, recognizing, honoring, revering the Creator, who's known by many names throughout the African diaspora: Olodumare, God, Jesus, Yahweh, many others, and you know their names. We pour libations, acknowledging, recognizing the Creator, who woke us up this morning, breathed life into us so that we could come together and do this work together, this important sacred work that we've been called upon to do. When I pour the liquid into the plant, you can say a word of spiritual or cultural power or energy. We pour libations. Ashe.
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 Thank you. And you can say it loud or silently, whichever you want to do. We pour libations, acknowledging both our collective ancestors and those who are in our family line. First, our collective ancestors, those who have paved the way for us to be here, to do the work of liberation and freedom. Those on whose strong shoulders we stand. They provide us with many, many models of who we are and how we are and what we can do to make sure that our community is strong, is enhanced, is beautiful. As we pour libations at this point, please call out the names of our ancestors who are collective ancestors for us. People such as Arminta Harriet Tubman. You can call their names out loud so we all can hear and so we all have that energy in this sacred space. Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Amos Wilson.
Harriet Tubman.
Ashe.
Muhammad Ali.
Patrice Lumumba. Ashe.
Nelson Mandela.
Ashe.
Bobby Wright.
Ashe.
Malcolm X.
Barnett. Ashe.
Malcolm X.
Ashe. Kobe Cambone. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Oh.
Du Bois. Hannibal Afrique.
Ashe.
Dr. Francis Quest Wilson.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. And for those who have not been named, we pour libations. Ashe. And now for our family ancestors, family which may be blood family, birth family, adopted family, renewed families, acquired families. We pour libations and we say their names aloud.
Emmett and Virginia Jones.
Glenn and Ophelia.
Little Larry.
Glenn Smith Jr.
Abraham Bellamy.
And Martha Willis.
William Gone.
Newest ancestor.
I do pray.
Ashe. Ashe. And for those in our families not named, we pour libations. And finally, we pour libations for the unborn children. We have borrowed their world, and we commit to making the world a better place than which we found it. Reasons why we are doing the work, reason why we're here tonight together. We recognize the unborn children who are ancestors waiting to be reborn, waiting for us to do our work and our play to be in harmony and balance, to make the world, our world, a better place. We pour and we say, Ashe,
Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe,
Ashe.
and it is done. MzTaty.
Do pray. Thank you, Mama Afua. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then next, I would like to invite Dr. Larry Turner to help us get grounded for this conversation, to become centered. We're not going to do a lot of explanation. This is, an organization that is very clear. And I make the mistake sometimes of saying I don't do traditional psychology when I explain I do drums and libration and breathings. But the truth is, this is traditional psychology for us.
Ashe.
These are our traditions. This is how we heal. This is how we gather. So we can talk later about why we do this and what the African-centered philosophy that guides our work. But we're very clear that we're in a mental health movement. People are talking about therapy and reducing the stigmas, but these things that we are doing, we have always done. And so with that, I would like to invite Dr. Larry Turner to, again, we getting right to business, but the business of being whole and connected and in alignment. And Dr. Turner is going to help us do that and center ourselves through the breath, and however else he decides to help, ground this conversation. So I want to just pass the mic to Dr. Turner to do some breathing to help to guide us into. Was that you grabbing the baton?
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
The breath. The breath is the first movement you do when you're coming out of the womb. It is the last thing we do when we're entering the darkness for the final time. The breath has all the power. That's why it's regulated by the brain and not by us. But we can tap into that power. And we can tap into it in a conscious way. There are many breathing techniques. I'm going to show you two. The first one is called Ujjayi or victory breath. So everyone sit up tall, roll your shoulders back, roll and relax. Okay. So listen to me do this. So both of these techniques are done with the mouth closed. So to hear Ujjayi breath, I'm going to inhale. My lips are slightly open and I'm going to narrow my throat as I exhale. And this is the sound. Okay, so everyone, inhale with lips slightly parted. Exhale. Okay, you're all experts at that. Now, next, I want you to inhale and make the same sound with your lips closed. So inhale, exhale. Again, inhale and exhale. The last part of this, make the sound as you inhale and exhale. So it would go like this. I would inhale and exhale. It's a gentle narrowing of the throat. And what it does, it brings the vibration and the sound of the breath into your consciousness. So this helps you to relax and get rid of anxiety. Continue with the breath, inhaling, exhaling. Now, another compatible breath to go along with that is 2-to-1 breathing. In 2-to-1 breathing, you exhale twice as long as you inhale. They can both be done together. So, or by themselves. So inhale, Ujjayi. Exhale slowly. Gently close your eyes if you haven't already. Inhale and exhale. Some of us may need to count. So we may count to ourselves as we inhale. 1, 2, and we exhale to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So continue 5 more breaths. Relax, focus in on the sound of the breath and the relaxation response. Complete the next round that you're in. Bow your head. Slowly flutter your eyes open and raise your head. Okay, so those 2 techniques you can do anywhere. Prior to, in a meeting, prior to speaking out, when you're dealing with your kids, when you're dealing with others who are not like you, it's designed to calm you down. Please share it with others. Namaste. Here's the mic.
Thanks, Dr. Turner. Just caught it. I appreciate that. I don't know if that's anybody else's first time sitting still for a moment and breathing on purpose, but I think it's important as we have discussions as serious as this that we need to detox and let go of all those things that we've been ingesting all day. And the breath is certainly a way to do so. So again, welcome. We are here. This is the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists, Black Suicide Prevention Town Hall. I am Dr. Obari Cartman, the current president of the Chicago chapter. We have some esteemed members and colleagues and elders and board members of the chapter here. We have the incoming national president, Donnell Barnett, who just joined us. So we got some powerful folks that I know of. And as I'm scrolling through these screens, I'm seeing people from all walks of life that have really insightful, work and perspectives on this question of suicide prevention, of substance prevention, of depression prevention, of anxiety prevention, and ways that we can really implement healing in our communities with the young people in mind, with elders in mind also. So it's a big conversation, it's an ambitious conversation, but I'm confident that the folks we have gathered can really put a dent in some of this when we work together, when we collaborate. So that's what we're here for. We just wanted to invite the community. It's a town hall for real. We're going to have some presentations. They're going to be very brief. We're going to have some artists share. They're very brief, but we want as much time as possible for the community to have a chance to speak. And you could begin to do so in the chat, but we are going to open the floor soon just to hear what y'all working on, to hear what y'all think about this. If y'all have not been keeping up with the stats in Cook County last year, we saw 97 Black people died by suicide. The age ranges were 9 years old to 84 years old, which means that this is not a young people problem. This is not any particular people problem. It runs the gamut. From my experience of it, the numbers are worse than those numbers suggest even. So we're in crisis, but those numbers don't count opioid overdoses, or they don't count the young boys that I personally heard that came to me and said, I didn't want to live no more. So I went 3 blocks over to my ops neighborhood, and I knew that was going to be the end for me. One particular boy came back to me, said he got shot 6 times, and I lived through it to tell that story. But there's homicide deaths that could count as suicide deaths, right? So it's a crisis that we're in. And I personally believe that there is no other group of people that can solve this than us. And by us, I mean the collective that decided to spend their Thursday evening talking about it. So we here, and we're going to figure some stuff out and make some links and connections and make some plans to do some work over the summer and beyond, starting tonight. So this is just the beginning of a conversation. I would like to invite my featured guest panelists. We got a brilliant folk here tonight to share with you. And the first question I'm asking them to speak to is just what is happening? Like, from your vantage points, what do you understand to be the explanation for the increase, for the rise, what about COVID? What about George Floyd? What about unemployment? What about the violence? What about the community and the chaos that we've experienced from your vantage point is contributing to this particular crisis in this moment? And then we're going to take a pause, have a guest artist share some things, and then come back with the same panel of 4 people to speak to some solutions from their vantage points. And then at that point, we're going to open it up. So very short presentations around analysis and around solutions. And then we're going to invite everyone to share in that conversation also. I'm going to introduce the panelists all at once. Again, powerful folk, and hopefully they can share their bios and their websites. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I see from my left to right, Dr. Constance Williams, who is been a part of ABSI since before I was working as a psychologist. So she's a old head in the group, and has been moved up through the ranks through the state of doing powerful work, many different levels. So I'm really excited to hear what she can see. When the higher you go, you get a different vantage point. So she's sitting on top of some perches and can share some things with us about what we can do, what must be done. Also up there, Dr. Rashad Saafir, the CEO of and director of the Bobby Wright Mental Health Centers on the West Side, and maybe expanding beyond that. Bobby Wright specifically was one of the founding members of this chapter of organization and a luminary in the field. So it's really critical to have his voice being represented through the work continued through Dr. Saafir. So happy to have him here. Brother Jamal Jones is with us from NAMI Chicago, is the clinical manager over there. NAMI is doing fantastic work throughout the city, raising awareness, offering free services. They have the only real hotline that I know of that people can call immediately today if they needed to. So I wanted to find, who the brother is over there that's doing that work that can help us give some insight into what they need and how we can support and how we can collaborate more often. And then Dr. Shambathia, who is also a longtime member of the organization. not sure if she's here. I don't see her face yet, but if she is or not, she'll be joining whenever she gets a chance. So the first question from the panelists, if you will, is what do you understand? How do you understand the increase? What's your explanation for what's happening in the community? And I don't want to pick. Y'all can, free flow this. Whoever wants to start to begin to share, the floor is open for the four of you to help us sort this out.
Thank you, Obari. I'll start off. First, let me thank Dr. Obari Cartman and the local chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists for addressing this issue that is plaguing our community and that is causing such great harm and grief among members of the community, particularly parents who are losing their children to suicide and to gun violence and all of the other things that are creating trauma within our community. I want to come at this potentially from a little bit of a different perspective. There's a lot of mythology out there with regard to Black suicide, everything from Black people don't kill themselves, Black people are killing themselves because they are affected by seeing other Black people who are advancing in their lives. I just read a report a couple of days ago that suggested that Black people are killing themselves in increasing numbers because they're seeing people like Oprah Winfrey and others who are making, multi-million dollars a year, and that's causing them to experience low self-esteem. The fact of the matter is that Black people have been killing themselves for a long time, and it goes all the way back to slavery. Suicide clearly among Africans and African Americans was seen as a last resort, as a way of escaping the suffering that people experienced. And so I want to just draw a bit of a corollary between what was going on in slavery and some of what we're seeing today. And I'm going to share with you some anecdotal information that was gathered by David Lester, who is a psychologist and has been deemed one of the leading experts in the area of suicide prevention. And so what Dr. Lester did was he constructed stories that were told by surviving slaves back in the 1930s. And this first story is from an interview of a male by the name of T.W. Cotton, who was enslaved in Arkansas. And he told this in 1939. It says, Aunt Adeline hung herself on a blackjack tree on the other side of the pool. It was a pool for ducks and stock. She hung herself to keep from getting a whipping. Mother raised her boy. She told mother she would kill herself before she would be whooped. I never heard what she was to be whipped for. She thought she would be whooped. She took a rope and tied it to a tree and her neck and then jumped. Her toes barely touched the ground. They buried her in the cemetery on the old Ed Cotton place. I've never seen her buried. The next one. My mother was drowned years before I was a little boy. I only remember her after she was dead. I can take you to the spot in the river body where she was drowned. She drowned herself. I never knew the reason behind it, but it was said she started to lose her mind and preferred death to that. Poor Aunt Nellie. The potter rollers whipped her one day. She took and went up in the barn, hid in the hay. When night came, she crawled out, went out in the woods, and climbed top a hill and rolled down. We missed her, but didn't think the gal was gwine, I'm reading in the vernacular, was gwine kill herself like she had told me before. Fanny, I done had my last whipping. I'm gwine to God. The bread where her old missus had done give her want never been touched and was found by her side. The buzzards had carried poor Nellie's head down the woods and picked her eyes out. These stories go on and on, where enslaved people decided to take their own lives rather than endure the misery of slavery. Statistics from 2015 to 2017 show that 52% of Black teen males who died from suicide used firearms as a method, with a fatality rate of nearly 90%. Another 34% used strangulation and suffocation, which has a fatality rate of about 60%. Now, if you can imagine someone suffocating themselves and the effort that it takes to take your own life through suffocation, that, in my mind, shows a very strong will to die, to escape the suffering that our young people are going through. As we talk about trauma, we've come to learn that trauma, the effects of trauma, can be communicated transgenerationally through epigenetics. And epigenetics is a process where the cellular structure is modified, the gene is modified in a way that that part of the brain that's responsible for memory, the hippocampus, stores that information and is passed on from one generation to another. And I offer that as a way of understanding how we've gotten from slavery to today, the conditions that would cause someone to commit suicide during slavery, and the conditions that cause our young people, and as Obari mentioned, it goes across the lifespan, to take their lives today, have not changed all that much. When we look at structural and institutional racism, the thread continues from one generation to another. And the response to those stressors, to some extent, has already been pre-wired in the brain. Now, this may sound somewhat fatalistic, because if the brain has been wired in such a way to predispose some people to resort to suicide, then how do we change that? Well, we also know that through some of the current methodologies that we're using in psychology, that those same structures in the brain can be modified. We witnessed one example of it at the beginning of this presentation this evening that Dr. Larry Turner took us through. Something as simple as breathing, engaging in self-talk that's more positive, and certainly becoming aware, more aware of the conditions that cause us to feel the way that we feel, and making a commitment to address those issues and to consciously not allow it to have the impact that it's designed to have. Dr. Bobby Wright was, quite often, he would say that if things were happening by chance, we'd all have an equal opportunity to commit suicide. We'd all have an equal opportunity to be in poverty. So these things that are happening in our community are not happening because of chance. They must be happening by design. And so we really need to look beyond the individuals who are committing acts of suicide to look at the systemic factors that create the conditions that cause people to feel helpless and hopeless to the point that they find death more attractive than living and enduring the conditions that they've been placed in. When we look at the city of Chicago, Chicago is one of the most segregated city in the United States, where if you are Black, you're likely to live in a community that's 95% or more Black. But that's only part of it. You're also more likely to live in a community that is stricken by poverty, by lack of access to mental health services, by lack of access to health services. If you live in the Black community, your life expectancy is anywhere from 18 to 20 years less than someone who lives in a white community. Dr. Carl Bell once asked the group to actually, who in the audience could name poor white communities in Chicago? And the audience was silent. But when he asked, how many poor Black communities can you name in Chicago? The list just started rolling off. Inglewood, Garfield Park, Austin, North Lawndale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have, a lot, I almost said allowed. I don't think that we have allowed. I think that we have been subject to systematic conditions that are perpetuated by structural and institutional racism that contribute to conditions that, again, cause the violence toward others and the subsequent violence that is being perpetrated on oneself that we call suicide. So I'll stop at that point and see if there are any reactions or questions.
I love it. Thank you so much, Doc. I feel Bobby right through you, right? Which is on. So you got some of your time and some of his time.
Yes.
Which is why I couldn't cut it, but it was powerful stuff. I appreciate that. Lots of reactions. We can please. People are sharing reactions in the chat too, so we can continue to do that. But I want to keep it moving so we can make sure we have time for the community to speak too. So Dr. Bathias has joined us, and Jamal and Dr. Williams are here. If y'all want to share your thoughts around what you see is happening, why it's happening, your analysis, we can do that quickly so we can get to some solutions from here.
Well, let me just say that suicide is a serious issue that affects the overall health of our community. And we know as mental health professionals that improving health and achieving health equity will require addressing the social determinants of health. So some of those factors are the socioeconomic status, education, neighborhood and physical environment, social support networks, as well as access to healthcare. So we have to be what SAMHSA terms a health strategist, and address those social determinants that contribute to the development of the behavioral health crisis in the first place. As African Americans in this country, we experience frequent and ongoing trauma. Our communities are in a constant state of crisis, a constant state of fight or flight. All of this has severe mental health consequences. Despite this reality of our circumstances, the miracle is that often we are so resilient that we have learned to move past the negative feelings of hurt and pain resulting from our intergenerational trauma. And so often we illustrate the concept of transforming coal into diamonds. You see on the slide there, the trend in suicide attempts among high school students, that Black adolescents had increased rates of suicide, while race declined for other races or ethnicities. Black adolescent boys experienced increased rates of injury resulting from suicide attempts, and Black adolescent girls experienced a significant increase of suicide attempts, while girls from other races, ethnicities, rates declined. Mental health is not a cookie cutter. One size doesn't fit all. As African American professionals, we are keenly aware that the research has shown that too often mental health, just like this country, is deeply rooted in systemic racism. At times, it feels like our healing system is really not designed to keep people healthy. We can address this. It is our responsibility to help our community engage in community healing that will result in collective wellness. The slide that's up before you now shows that this is covering the time between 1993 to 2017, and you see there are rising trends for our Black youth, for our Black children. And if you continue, the next slide will show you some of the risk factors that Black adolescents suffer that cause this to be a problem. We know there's depression, we know there's externalizing behavior, poor familial support, substance abuse, and that this could be a mental health disorder. Some other factors might be the mental health conditions, the neighborhood context, racism and discrimination, and sexual and gender minority status. The thing that we know from interviews from urban Black youth, they said being depressed means experiencing high-level crimes in neighborhoods. It's losing neighborhood trust and a sense of connectedness to the physical environment. It's living under stress without support and resources. It's not being able to go outside and play, visit friends, and enjoy activities of interest. It is feeling unsafe and without protection, where protection is expected. How many of us have heard a young person say that to us? I'm sure too many of us have heard that. So racism and discrimination, as we know, is a big piece of this. Black adolescents, as of last year, average over 5 racial discrimination experiences per day. Can you imagine and that's probably a minimal amount. And then there's exposure to traumatic videos that also helps, that also associated with repression and PTS symptoms in Black and Latinx adolescents. So this last slide shows you with sexual and gender minority Black youth, that they have negative experiences, whether in the classroom, in the halls, at lunch, or during extracurricular activities. Many Black and African American youth, LGBTQ youth, have negative forms of discrimination they've experienced. The numbers are large. 67% have been verbally assaulted because of their LGBTQ identity. 30% have been physically threatened because of their LGBTQ identity. And 90% have experienced racial discrimination. So when we look at, we'll talk about solutions, but we have to know that this is an issue that's a long-standing issue in our community, and until we address it specifically for our communities, I agree with you, Dr. Cartman, We are the ones that have to fix this problem. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Dr. Patia, Jamal.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamal Jones, and I'm the clinical manager over at NAMI Chicago. One of the things that we're focusing in on is making sure that our name and the work that we're doing is reaching the inner city. So with that being said, I know I have personally went over to the West Side, spent time over there, educating them on this free service. Some of the challenges include lack of resources or knowledge about where to go. And so that's definitely one of the things that we're working on here at NAMI Chicago.
Nice, short and sweet. I love it. Dr. Patia.
Hello, everyone. Let's bring in my video. Yes, I'm gonna make this short and sweet too. So, when I think this notion, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of go over very quickly just some of the thoughts. I think someone brought it up before, that ancestor Bobby Wright had around this notion of what he called, I think he used the term own life taking, right? And so back in like the 90s, it's like, this is something a taboo thing we don't talk about, but it's kind of always happened in our community. But a survey was done in 1998 and said that regarding to African and US people and own life taking, one of the largest correlate was being a resident in a Western world. They found that to be one of the strongest correlate, your residency actually. So if we looked at this notion about where we live, how might we look at this difference? I guess that becomes the question that I not only ask social workers, psychologists, everybody in this field. So let's say in the Black community, we take a different look at suicide for Black people, and that that this should be more specific to the needs of Black people and Black people, especially in America. So Ancestor Wright talked about this notion of menticide, and it's been looked at many different ways, which is defined, and I'll just use his words, as the deliberate and systematic destruction of an individual or group's mind. Menticide differs in theory and practice from concepts of brainwashing, in that its ultimate aim is to shift an entire race, whereby brainwashing is primarily used to convert individuals or groups to a cause or a belief. So if we think about our experience in America and think about how that connects to own life stuff. So looking through that kind of lens, Barbara Wright would say that white-directed techniques in an attempt to solve these problems will continue to be unsuccessful until we adequately account for structural and systemic anti-Blackness. He was very specific about that. So drawing from Brother Wright's central thesis that own life taking among African US persons is ultimately an expression of the anti-Black ethos that's pervasive in our society. That he actually has a model of own life taking behavior that actually considers these issues. And I know there's many issues that cross, and I see Mama Nyala here, and I know you know way more about this because that was your stuff. And I probably would love to hear you talk about it more. How that shift in how we conceptualize models what may be more helpful, because I would say that Ancestor Wright would say that own life taking, there's an intervention for, right? It's just that we look at the wrong models for intervention. So how do we look at this culture-based? It makes sense that if Africans have a different culture, maybe we see this notion of own life taking differently. We should come from that specific way of looking at it, from a more cultural base of looking at it, from a more community-based, and not putting Black face on white theory, right? So this model justifies community and private past counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, social work to actually incorporate racial realism into their programming. And I would say from my reading, that Ancestor Wright was very clear about the nature of this psychological devastation. It was very clear that we had to actually look at social and political negativity, menticide, and this particular disorder or dis-ease based in our own cultural context and our almost human reaction to a human experience of being African American. It's like, it's so hard to do this in 2 minutes, but I'm gonna stop there and hopefully people add more to the conversation. I would love to hear from people who are actually doing the work over at the Bobby Wright Center, but I thought I would just bring that up as a different way to look at how we look at taking of life in our community. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you very much, Dr. Bethia. And with that in mind, just the cultural specific way of having these conversations, of doing this as Black and African as possible, we wanted to break up the conversation with a little bit of art, with some hip hop, with some oral tradition, with some rhythm. We have an artist and a counselor in the network named Tatiana Lane, she goes by MzTaty, who is both. She's a counselor, she's a brilliant a rapper and an advocate, and she wrote a song and that I found a recording of that I want to share first, and then ask her to speak about what she was writing about, what was the inspiration for that song, how music and culture and rhythm and those vibrations, what that has to do as we go into this next part of this. Like, what do we do with this? Great insight, brilliant stats, knowledgeable understanding. From now on, we want to talk about what do we do about that. The rest of this town hall is a solution-based, collaborative planning workshop. Like, how do we fix this now that we got a better view of this? And the beginning of that is art. And so I want to share this as we transition into this next phase of the conversation around solutions, antidote, the medicine. And I want to play MzTaty's song. I don't even know if it has a name, or maybe it does, and then I'm going to ask her to share what this is about for her. But let me make sure I got the sound in this. I do. Good. And Ricky, MzTaty. It's my DJ noise.
1 out of 5 people in America is diagnosed with a mental illness. Out of those 5 people, only 1 has access to mental health services. I go by the name of MzTaty, MzTaty, and on the ukulele is Margot. We here to bridge gaps. This is mental health meets hip hop. Tears running down my cheek every time that I think a CAT scan to capture your casket if they had to see. Memories on repeat, no rewind, no delete. Now you underneath the sheet, tell me how could this be? Ignoring all the signs, what was going through your mind? I remember I was young, I remember the gun. Still sitting with your mother, she still missing her son. My brother 31, he still missing y'all bond. Who thought the family tree would be missing a leaf? Always thought suicide was an out for the weak. It's really a cry out when you ashamed to speak. I know how I feel, please take it from me. No goody, bully, body shame, dirt on my name. Self-esteem was targeted, they perfected the aim. It's some lessons and some blessings when you get through the pain. The sun always gonna shine, you gotta dance through the rain. You gotta love yourself and your mental health. You know somebody going through it, then reach out and help. My cousin killed himself, I still feel the defeat. And the crazy thing about it almost happened to me. It almost happened to me. And I wanna understand what you're going through. Looking in the mirror, staring at an image, thinking about beauty and what really is it? I know the definition, but definitions is different. Is it based on your pigment or freckle positions? Your face, your weight, your waist or your shape? Is it short curly hair or is it long and straight? Is it really how you look or the things that you say? The God you choose to pray to or the people that you date? Cause I've been covered up in bruises, bumps and scrapes. Proud cricket smile that disalign my face. Overweight with freckles that I can't erase. Birthmarks on my body that I can't replace. Fingers and toes that I can't reshape. That I won't create cause it's no mistake. Accepted all the flaws that I used to hate. Beauty in the eye of a beholder, so hold your place, hold your place. And I wanna understand what you're going through. Hold your place. 5 people are diagnosed with a mental illness. Out of those 5 people, only 1 has access to mental health resources. 1-888-273-TALK. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you know somebody going through it, reach out and help. Yeah. At night, I wanna understand what you're going through. But I can't imagine what it's like in your shoes. Mental health meets hip hop. Tiny desk.
Beautiful.
One out of
Yes.
5 people in America is diagnosed with mental illness.
Thank you for that, MzTaty. Beautiful. And she's here. She's right here in the flesh, on the Zoom, on the screen. So we'd love for you to share about your organization, Mental Health Meets Hip Hop, your work as a counselor, your work as an artist, and just help us with this next part of this conversation. What can we do about this? What does art have to do with it? How does hip hop help you with access kinds of questions? Introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Obari, as always, for always inviting me. Thank you, I appreciate it. My name is MzTaty. I'm a hip hop artist. I'm also a mental health professional. I did some counseling on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I'm currently Associate Executive Administrator for a severe mental health rehabilitation facility on the west side of Chicago in the Austin neighborhood. I also founded the organization Mental Health Meets Hip Hop. So what created me to even just create that song, I had a cousin that died by suicide. This happened when I was younger, but it was so detrimental to my family because, I mean, we had no language. I mean, it goes back to what a few of the doctors, you know, before me spoke on. I mean, suicide is still a stigma in the community. Mental illness is still a stigma. So, you know, when my cousin, you know, died by suicide, it was just so detrimental. So the only way that I could cope, that I knew how to cope, was to write music. Music kind of predestined everything, even, you know, me going to school. But with that, it was just kind of outlet. It was my way of doing therapy. So with that, I have other, you know, artist friends that I'm connected to. And I realize in our communities that a lot of us, we use poetry and our arts to kind of, for that therapeutic outlet. So with the creation of Mental Health Meets Hip Hop, we take music, poetry, the arts, we do different science projects and things like that to just educate the community on mental illness, but also it's a therapeutic approach. We denounce the clinical terminology and just speak like how we do in the neighborhood. So that's what I stand on. That's what I've always been about. And I just want to continue to do that. So yeah.
I love it. I love your work. I love your artistry. Thank you for being here. And she got more music too. So you got YouTube links. If you got Instagram, make sure you share that so people are following you. And everybody, hopefully, I hope y'all watching this chat. This chat is popping right now. Hopefully, y'all are getting people's resources and emails and adding each other on Instagram. So if nothing else happens, we get information, but we also need to start networking like immediately. So make sure you share everything. And if you're gonna stay around, you know, people can ask you questions directly later about how we can do work together, how we can all collaborate more. So now let's go back one more time quickly. We can do a minute apiece if we can, just to begin this conversation about ideas, innovative solutions, creative collaborations. If we can go back through the order of the panelists, Dr. Saafir, Dr. Williams, Dr. Bethia, and then Jamal Jones, just to offer what you're working on now, what you see, what your needs are. There might be people in the chat that are working on something that you could partner with. Like, let's just start to brainstorm what we can do about it. What's some things that you have done that are successful, some proven methods. One of the questions that we're talking about is like, what is the uptick? Like, what happened recently to explain the recent rise in suicides? But the underlying question, like underneath it, like the opposite of that, the inverse of that, if you will, that the elders can really help us with is what was keeping Black people from not doing it before, right? what did we lose in the fabric of our communities, in spirituality or the community or the network? I mean, what did we give up, or how did the system become so savvy that it outsmarted us, and whatever solutions we had, it eroded them? Like, what did we lose to make it so that we're starting to see more violence in so many different ways, addiction and suicide and gun violence? Like, are there things that we need to restore and get back to that are also part of this conversation of solutions? So the intergenerational panel allows us to do that too, to not just talk about what's the recent COVID implications, but like what were the things that explained even during slavery, Dr. Saafir, that how did some people make it, right? We here because somebody decided, right, to endure anyway. Like, what were those things? And so when I think about solutions and like innovative ways to incorporate healing, that's part of the question for me. What were some of the things from your experiences that are part of our culture, part of our worldview, our value system, that have held us together that we might be slipping away from us over the last generation or so? So solutions times. We got the last hour. I want to be dedicated just to solutions. We can start with the panelists and then open the floor to the community. If anybody has any insights or offerings or needs, the floor will be open for that. Dr. Saafir.
Yes, thank you, Obari. I think that one of the things that we've lost is a sense of cultural identity. And, you know, as I think back on the work that was being done during the late 60s and 70s, it was about creating a sense of cultural identity among African Americans. A lot of the work that Dr. Bobby Wright was doing, people like Asa Hilliard, you know, was the whole notion was to redefine who we are as Black people, you know, in the diaspora. And that meant reconnecting with our roots that are grounded in Africa. Every group in the United States of America has a place that they identify with in terms of their culture. If you're an Italian American, it's Italy. If you're a Japanese American, it's Japan. But for African Americans, because Africa has been a part of the overall denigration of Black people throughout this world, it was very difficult for some African Americans to even identify with Africa as their homeland. And so, you know, the other factor, and again, going back to the period when we were enslaved people, is that our culture was torn away from us because the oppressor understood that culture was power. And so, you know, language, customs, rituals, and things of that nature were not allowed as expression among enslaved people because, again, the oppressor understood that the mentality and the resiliency of people of African descent originated with their culture. And so I think that the voices that were promoting that connection, unfortunately, have been lost, and many of them were lost to death and to early death. Dr. Bobby Wright died at the age of, I think he was only 49 years old. His work was just beginning. And, you know, imagine what that would be like were he here today, you know, continuing that work. So it's really left up to those of us who have survived to continue that work. When I became president and CEO of the Bobby Wright Center in 2013, one of the first programs that I implemented was a program for youth that was based upon the simple notion that it takes a village to raise a child, and that we needed to incorporate interventions that were not grounded in the white experience, but that were grounded in the Black experience. The program was incredibly successful. We had young people who were engaged with the criminal justice system, who were at risk of dropping out of school or being expelled from school, who were dealing with issues of depression and trauma. We saw the change, but again, because our systems of care are so tied to the broader system, trying to be politically correct, I don't even know why I'm doing that in this context, but again, because we depended upon the decision makers who did not appreciate our experience, who did not value our experience, and who did not look like us. There were some budgetary issues that forced us to in a position where we were not able to continue that program. So what we are doing now is we're starting to re-implement that program, and I'm really inspired by Sister Tati, because one of the things we're doing in this center that we've established on the west side that should be opening sometime either later this summer or early fall, is a youth program that includes a lot of non-traditional activities, non-traditional from the Eurocentric perspective, that include dance, music, and other forms of expression. Within this facility, we actually have a recording studio that we're going to be standing up. And we want young people to be able to come in and do what you see Sister Tati doing, and that is creating their own musical expressions around what they're experiencing, to be able to, to express that in an emotional way, to externalize it, and to be able to, to look at that, and to be able to hopefully, grow from having the opportunity, for that level of self-expression. So I think that in terms of solution, it's going to take a long-term and consistent effort on the part of organizations like the Association of Black Psychologists to continue to get this information out, to continue working towards shifting the paradigm more in the direction of an Afrocentric approach to addressing the mental health concerns of African Americans. I'd like to make a public request of ABPSI. I'm also chair of an organization on the West Side that's called the West Side Behavioral Health Task Force. I'm the co-chair along with State Representative LaShawn Ford. And so I think that if we can partner with ABPSI to do this kind of work and expand it, across this city, both through this virtual medium and through, in-person gatherings, I believe that we can garner the resources to get this message out, and to reinvigorate, reimagine, and recreate the cultural identity that I think is going to build more resistance and resilience among our people.
I love it. And I'm, as the representative of the chapter, we would absolutely be happy to participate on the task force. We've had Rep. LaShawn Ford with us at the top of the year, so very familiar with him and a friend of his work. So, yeah, absolutely. That's an easy yes for us.
So I have developed a trauma series. I think maybe the first step would be for us to get together and partner around, how we get this information out into the community.
All for it. So let us know what the next steps is.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams, Dr. Bethia, Jamal Jones.
Let me just say this, that I don't know how many of you know, you've all heard of the 911 number that you call. So there's going to be a number now, 988. Which is a 3-digit dialing code that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and Vibrant Health are planning to be implemented as of next July. This is once it's operational, it'll be a direct line to train call takers available to anyone experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts anywhere in the United States. So it's anywhere, anybody at any time can get help. I know sometimes for us who are providers in some of our agencies and clinics where their resources might be an issue, I really encourage you to try to get involved with this initiative, because it is a way for us to have people answering the phone and culturally connect with people who are calling in. We have to do everything. It's not just one approach is going to be successful. We need to look at all the options. So I'm hoping that when you hear more about this, an opportunity to get involved with the state of Illinois, it's culturally, we don't have enough people who are culturally able to handle people who come to our system who are not your traditional European person. I don't know any other way to put it. It's the truth. So I encourage you to get involved with this initiative, because it is very, very important. And it'll have big implications for our communities.
Okay. If you got any information about it, any things we need to be?
Well, right now, there is there's a group that's working with DMH, Division of Mental Health, where I am. But if you got, guys, give me a call or give us a call, and we'll see what agencies you're working with, agencies that are involved in this group. But we need to be looking at expanding that.
Okay. So if people want to reach out to you, can you say more clearly who you with and what you do?
Okay. Well, I'm with the Division of Mental Health. I'm the executive director of Region 1 North and Region 1 South, which means nothing to you guys. Basically, 2/3 of Chicago, mental health services, and the counties surrounding Chicago is where 80% of the mental health services in the state of Illinois are covered. And that's the area that I'm the executive director for. So which means we work with the providers, which means I can say to you clearly, we need more providers. We need more agencies for people of color who are culturally different from your traditional European person, because we just don't have enough. If you think about it, wherever you live, think about where you would go if you wanted mental health services. I dare say most of you can't think of anything close in African-American communities, because there just aren't enough. So I would ask you to, I'll put my number in the chat to call my office, and we definitely want to be more inclusive, because if we don't get more people involved, we can't say anything when things don't happen the way we want them to.
True.
Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
That makes perfect sense. And I know y'all keep tiptoeing around these languages. I guess you never know who we're watching. So, but yes, we understand what you're saying. Dr. Bethia, do you have anything to contribute around this question of solutions?
Yes. I'm working on a project called We Are Each Other's Medicine. And more about even context than what we're doing is this notion of we are who we've been looking for. And so how do we get back to our African-centered, back to the source, our African-centered ways where I know the term healing circle has kind of been overplayed lately, but the notion of sitting in communities, because I also think that Ancestor Wright talked about that you'll live if you have something to live for. So is it our responsibility to make sure that our kids know that they have something to live for? And then I love, I don't know if people read Sean Jenwright's work and amazing work he's done in Oakland. Just so I did Freedom Schools. I've been with him for a long time. Freedom Schools was under his tutelage and I did my dissertation on Oakland Freedom Schools. And he talked about this notion of shifting from this notion of trauma-informed care to healing-centered engagement. So I like, he does so much work with and have his entire career with our community, with Black kids, getting things together. Like they do something for a year, their reward was going to the continent. And the community town hall after each one of these kids in inner city. Oakland is a big city with, a little town with a big city reputation. So I want to call it town hall meeting. What these kids talked about in these experiences of being in this notion of healing centered engagement with Sean's organization for a year. So again, the same thing that I'm doing. We Are Each Other's Medicine, where we talk about healing each other and giving each other conversation and hope and talking about our issues as African-centered people, understanding, and I'm moving into some realms around AB side, more working in AB side, that our mission is for the healing and being very careful. We talk about healing. Everybody's, I'm a healer, I'm a healer, I'm a healer, I'm a healer. I've been to the continent of Cuba. I've seen healers, and some of us are not. So how do we begin to have a conversation what that really looks like for us, what that looks like for our children? And then again, like I said, Ancestor Wright said, we give them something to live for, they won't take their own life. And that's our responsibility. And I just wanted to because I came and I was teaching class, there's some context, there's some things in the chat I'm not understanding. So just how can we engage? I don't know, this is people from the community, but there's a couple things that have me a little shaken and maybe we should address if we can, I don't know. I think some people are trying to say I'm hurting, but I'm not knowing what the context are in the chat. So if somebody else does.
I'm not following the chat that well. We got a room full of clinicians and counselors. If somebody can attend to that, if there's someone in need, if there's resources, if you want to reach out directly to people, please do so. We don't want people that saw this flyer, came here looking for help, to leave without being directed to that.
Yeah, he was given a number.
Yes, several of us, I think, have reached out to him. So yeah, we're not disregarding that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Jamal Jones, speaking of hotlines, you have anything to add to this?
Yes, I take phone calls every day, and I never know what I'm going to get. I don't know if I'm going to get someone who's depressed or someone who is actually suicidal. Unfortunately, I talked to one of my regular callers today, and he told me about what his plan was last night. And so I made it my business to make sure that he got to a welcoming center, which is where he could go for one-to-one talk therapy, because he wasn't in a headspace to go over to the University of Chicago, which I really wanted him to go to. But what's the solution? I think that there are a lot of people that are hurting. There's a lack of community, a lack of love in the community in which people reside in. And so I think that just opening the door and allowing them to know in the physical presence of we're here, talk to us, call us, because I know, like, when I take the phone calls, I want to hear what's going on. I want to know who you are so that I can get a better picture of what's going on. So I think the solution is to make your presence known, be available, listen, and be attentive to what their direct needs are.
I love it. Makes sense. So anybody want to reach out to Jamal to talk more about collaboration with NAMI, please feel free. You can put your info, your contact there. And the only other structured thing I want to make sure we protect time for is Michelle Thompkins. She started a nonprofit called The Corner Store. It's a really innovative work. I would love to hear from her in a second. But before that, I'm going to open the floor just a little bit. There's a lot of folk in the room. If people have comments or questions for any of the speakers, this is supposed to be town hall still, so we want to make sure there's time for people, for the community to speak. No agenda. You can keep your comments brief, relevant, and targeted to the conversation. That would be all I ask. But if anybody has anything that they want to say or share, or resources or questions or conversations, I'm going to open the floor right now. Thank you, the four of you, for opening the way. And now the floor is open. Anybody has anything you want to say?
How are you? How's your family out there? Yes, my name is Calvin Muhammad, and thank you for having this forum, and thank all your guests for showing and giving us this valuable information. I lost my dad to suicide in 1974, which started me to studying mental health at that time. And it's quite interesting. There's a lot going on there. But I also go back to the Bible, the African Heritage Bible. We lost our cultural and spiritual way in this wilderness of North America. Being surrounded by a lack of food, clothing, shelter, and education, we are a doomed people. We need to get back to our source of who we really are, the chosen people of God. And I've been reading and going over Deuteronomy 28 and 29 because suicide is part of a curse, a spiritual curse as well. And Deuteronomy 28 and 29, if you read that, you'll understand what I mean. I don't want to take up a lot of time with it, but with the inhumane treatment that we received, suicide was a way out. And it's in our genes. It's part of in our genes. That's what's wrong with us. It's in our genes down through the generations, which is it's a spiritual curse. That's a curse. And we have to go all the way back to the beginning and start all over again if we really want to knock a dent in this scourge of our people. So
I appreciate that, Brother Muhammad.
Read Deuteronomy 28 and 29, and you'll see what I mean. Thank you.
No, thank you. I love Black people. You never know what Black people are gonna say. I asked Mr. Muhammad reading Deuteronomy. I don't know that I was ready for that. I love it though. we so rich. You know what I mean?
It's there.
And if y'all know how to use the hand function, if y'all can raise hands of people so we can know who the order of the people want to share, so we can keep this not from being chaotic. But
what are those scriptures he said? Deuteronomy what?
28 and 29.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Richard Mitchell, and then MzTaty, I see.
Well, good evening to each and everyone in the circle. I am Dr. Mitchell. I taken this from the approach of Dr. Cartman, who said solution-based should be the method and approach that we should always cipher. And I looked at Matthew, Matthew 27. Obviously, Judas, Matthew 27, it stipulates that Judas hanged himself. And so Judas had the opportunity to be, as we know, the treasurer for Jesus. But however, when he saw the opportunity to join the state, he betrayed Christ. And instead of, as the symbol with Sankofa, go back and fetch it, and restorative justice, go back and make amends with your wrong, he decided to hang himself instead of repenting. And so I believe it is with the community that, and those of us who have taken the path of wronging the community and the greater society. So we should instill in our, especially young men, I've been trained in restorative justice for young youth, and in having them to get the grasp of learning from an early stage to become remorseful and sorry for what they have implemented against their own. And so if we could be an intervention, even though it was prophesied by Jesus that this is going to happen, we could change prophecy. And I'm sure Christ would have preferred him to repent more than having his prophecy to be fulfilled. And the same with Peter. Peter was prophesied that he's going to deny him. We could change that outcome to a better result, that we don't have to end up as one would prophesy about end disaster, but instead cause and change his so that
your connection is a little
future can be
choppy, Dr.
beloved
Mitchell.
brother.
I appreciate that. Your connection. You calling from Canada, ain't you?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but some about that connection is a little choppy. But we hear you so far.
So I'll leave it there because
yeah.
it's kind of all right.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. MzTaty and then Miss Karen Hempstead, please.
Okay, so I hear a lot of people talking about how our culture was snatched away and things like that, coming from those slavery times, and that could have had a lot of trauma, you know, done to us as a people, and perhaps led us into some of these traumatic events that we're going through today. But I think if we can kind of just get underneath the social engineering and the you know, basically the victimization part of that. I think in our culture, and a reason why suicide is so high, if you're taught that you were a slave, if you were subservient to people your entire life, and it's generationally being taught from you know, individuals that gave you that knowledge, you know, just like they, you know, a lot of people would say everything was snatched away, so we were given religion and knowledge and things like that. If we can come from underneath that and put some type of empowerment there, because I know, you know, since I was a little kid, I've been learning about slavery and things like that, but I never was taught about a lot of stories of the people that actually conquered, and that, you know, like Mansa Musa was a, you know, a melanated male that was the richest guy in the world, or Noble Drew Ali that was teaching people about nationality. Even Malcolm X got into, you know, nationality and things like that before he passed, but more so, you know, standing up and showing empowerment. I think we need a lot more individuals that look like us, that aren't scared to speak out and aren't scared to really bite their tongue, but actually speak out to show empowerment. And, you know, that's something that we can do to alleviate suicide, because if we're taught just, you know, this is who you are, this is who you were, it's like, where's the good at? I mean, all of the history that, you know, that's taught about Black people usually comes from a place of trauma. I mean, but what about the triumph? Why aren't we glamorizing that? Why aren't we showing the civilizations that were here before the slaves came over here? What about the melanated people that were here that, you know, build pyramids and things like that? Why aren't we talking about, you know, Cahokia and some of the mounds and pyramids that were built in America by people, you know, melanated people of color? So I think, you know, it's a lot of stuff that we aren't just collectively being taught, or that, you know, some of us may know, but we aren't collectively talking about it. So if we're, you know, teaching this generationally, I mean, it has a lot to do with suicide, because you continue this path of hopelessness. So, you know, with me, I just want to be a beacon of that, to showing something different, to, you know, letting people know, you know, you are descendants from kings and queens. You are descendants from people of wealth. You know, you are the people of wealth. That's why the war is so hard on melanated people, you know, even getting back to our spirituality and to, you know, who we were, and to living in nature and becoming more connected with nature. So
I love
that's
it.
all I want to add.
That's beautiful. I love it. Very powerful. Karen Hempstead, Baba Osafo, then Natasha. You are muted, Mama.
Greetings. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Scholars and what have you. You know, I'm down here on the ground. I'm grassroots, and I deal with our people. As a matter of fact, I became a substitute so that I could travel throughout Los Angeles and share with students information that's not necessarily mainstream. You asked what happened. Back then, Black was beautiful, and our people began to rise. And of course, we all know that they murdered leadership, pumped guns and drugs in our community. And, you know, a lot was lost. They began to use media. I'm a media psychologist, and they began to use media against us. And subtly, just going back to Dr. Kenneth Clark's research, when our children were choosing the white doll, what's pretty, what's smart, what's nice, they are still choosing the white doll. It's sad that our children do not know about melanin. It does more than make you Black. Melanin not only protects you from the harmful rays of the sun, it helps you to think faster. It's in the brain, it's in most of our cells. At the point of conception, melanin is there, and it's part of our organs, and it's very powerful, and our kids need to know that. They need to know about phenotype. Our kinky hair can form a halo. You fall on it, it provides something of a cushion. Melanated eyes see better. Other eyes, they're more susceptible to disease. Also, some people develop long pointed noses because in the cold of Europe, when people would inhale the oxygen, it would get heated up by the blood corpuscles in the nose before it got to the lungs. But they did not develop full lips. Primates don't have lips. They test if something's too hot or too cold, help you to make words. Plus, you got something to pucker up and give somebody a kiss with. They don't have the buttocks, nor do primates really. Except the one with that little pink puff, right? Well, buttocks help you to sit up straight. They help you to run fast. So those smaller ankles, they help you to maneuver. And we come from the first people to read, write, and compute. People who built the pyramids, they knew STEM then and had developed a belief system. And then they're going to turn around and say, we come from savages? I beg your pardon. I'm not the one. Now, I don't know who you are. And I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm from no monkey or gorilla either. I'm like a brother from another planet, not me. And I'm just saying that our children need to know these things, that they come from abundance. People from that cold weather, when you think about it, just like we put things in the refrigerator, it slows down the developmental process. They are not as developed. I beg your pardon. And then you look at the behavior, excuse me, we're part of the humane people. You know, some people have always behaved as if insane. How you gonna build a farm and let people in it and then release lions and call that sport? Are you serious? Excuse me. People dress up one day and then go to church and then go to a lynching. I beg your pardon. And now they got people in cages. You got people who have access to the vaccine that they say is going to help people in terms of COVID, but they sitting back letting thousands of people die every day. What is that? And I learned that it's not about the money, it's ego. And I believe people are afraid because the numbers are dwindling. They circling the wagons. And if our children are still running around, don't know who they are, trying to be like them, and clearly they can't. So maybe they get saddened. Just like somebody mentioned Oprah, you don't have her money. So what? That doesn't mean she's happy. You know, excuse me? Just because you're not that, really? So, you know, I think we're intellectualizing, but we're not dealing with what's really going on in this society. which is they're playing on our children's minds.
Mm.
And unless our children know their history and culture and know who they are, excuse me, can you name me 10 animals from Europe? How about 5? I'll give you the horse and the wolf, the long noses. Give me 5. Yes. Lion, zebra, elephant, I can go on and on. We come from abundance. You know, Africa, the exotic animals, you understand? Stem, all of that. The Americas, the buffalo, they had sugar and tobacco. The Asians had what? You know, the silk, jade, rice, explosives. What did Europe have? Help me out.
I can't help you with that. I hear
They
you, Mama.
developed the bomb. They developed guns.
Mm-hmm.
And their worldview is about dominance. Going back to Kobe Kambon. Right?
Yeah, I hear you, Mama.
That's what we're dealing with. And I will release the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Appreciate
it. I feel better already. We need to bottle you up. Send you that's the medicine, right?
I've got it written. I just have to get authorizations to use those icons.
Ashe.
It was amazing.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Thank you very much. Babo Safo, Natasha, then Mama Afua.
Wow, I feel like I should just say amen and let the, let the choir continue. Actually, Mama Karen and MzTaty has reiterated some of my thoughts that we, while we have a lot in our DNA, if we go back, also in our DNA is survival. And if we think about this nation, we were not just into taking our lives. I don't know that I embrace the idea that you know, that's in our DNA, and so we're going to take our lives. I think we have other elements that were in there also, and I don't think culture was. I don't know that I embrace the fact that culture was all culture was taken from us, because I think we kept reiterating culture and blending culture within the experiences that we found ourselves. One of the things I think about is how I think about my parents. They never, I never heard them expect to turn any parts of our living over to the system. You were sent to school, but the school, they never turned education over to the school, because you were in education at home, you were expected to be in education at church, you were expected to be in education within the community. So that part, those parts were never. In terms of, I think about statement was when you finished high school, you were gonna go to college or get a good job so that you could serve the community. I think about around the 80s, that second part started getting dropped off. It was, you know, go get a good education, get a good job. And I don't remember hearing parents talk about that second part, so that you could serve the community in a better way. So there were these mores that started getting pulled from the culture in the 60s and the 70s. And I think it's as generations progressed forward, we started Xing out more and more, and we started turning the education of our children over to the system, and the system starts extracting education rather than putting much of that back in. So I'm thinking about an African proverb that said, and one day the monkey tried so hard to imitate his oppressor that he cut his own throat. And so are there ways in which we shifted out of the moray of being our own people, trusting the system, and then trying to imitate it to the point that we've taken on some of the mores of the system rather than talking about those mores and those problems being a part of our own DNA system? Because if we go back, we have to go back beyond anything that was offered to us in this country, including spirituality, and look at the original source. And if that's what's in our DNA, we are still a very powerful people, and we can still lead our people back to the source of who we are. And that's what I heard Mama talking about. So I don't have to say any more than that.
I love it. That's heavy, Bob. Appreciate that. Sister Natasha E.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for hosting this space. One of the things, two things that came up as I was listening to the presenters, I do work, with Chicago public school parents, youth, and community members. And, just being involved in schools, I'm sure if you all have young people, you may have also seen, the lack of care, the lack of resources for our young people in the school system. And quite honestly, just not even that it's no, lack of resources, but how the miseducation plays into their mental health needs. So if these spaces could be, even more so duplicated or host more spaces, and when we can engage our young people, I love the mental health around hip hop. That just seems fascinating. I want to share that with some people. So, when I think about our young people in Chicago who need so much, I'm curious to hear if you all touch, or, those that are providers, do you provide care and health, for, our young children, our youth? And then the other point, as I saw someone here in the chat, is a veteran. I'm also a veteran, spent 20 years on active duty in the Air Force. And I am concerned, about, veteran care. You go to the VA and you see, usually they want to talk to you for about 30 minutes. And the first, the very next thing is to prescribe something that alters your mind in a way that, reduces your function, your functionality. So I'm curious about from the providers, like, I have a lot of friends who do not seek mental health care because they don't want that. And so I'm thinking about, what avenues would you suggest people go for two things: how to find more Black healthcare providers that take, TRICARE or, some of their, types of, I don't know why I'm losing my thoughts here. I was ready before you called me. But wait, so that finding, people who they can talk to that look like them. And then the other part is alternatives to those medications that really do alter a person in a way that sort of keeps them away from getting this seeking help. Peace. Ashe.
There's some answers already in the chat about some of the things ABSI is doing. If anybody else, read the chat. There's a couple things have come in the chat of alternative resources, and alternative is a weird word too, but we out here, there's folks that are doing lots of different things. So if you have programs that you're doing, offerings, I know got the thing at wellness circles I'm doing on Sundays at the quarry, so I can put that link in there. But there's a lot of folks that are doing a lot of things, but we also want to do more. So if there's opportunities or space or need, we also want to make those connections today as well. Mama Afua, and then I'm gonna bring in Michelle Thompkins.
Oh yeah, so thank you, Obari, and I'm going to be really brief because I want you to bring in Michelle Tompkins. I think she will be a wonderful powerhouse. I just want to say three things very, very quickly and briefly. One is to thank all of us for being here. This is such an important issue in our community, and I just feel very fired up, empowered to hear, feel the energy of all of us doing this work and hearing about some new things. I think that's really critical. And as we connect with each other and network, we can even provide more healing in our community. The second point I wanted to make is Dr. Bethia talked about the healing-centered engagement. And this is something that's been on my mind a lot because I think, there are all these, the new thing, and not that they're new. So everybody's talking about trauma, and that's because it's real and we have to deal with that. I think also, though, it becomes kind of like the sexy thing to do. You learn about it, you embrace it, and then it becomes so much a part of our identity that we are traumatized people, which has a lot of physical, psychological, spiritual implications about who we see ourselves as and what we do. And so that notion of like the reframing from trauma to healing centered. And also I saw in a meditation where someone talks about trauma transformation, because there is a reason. There's an African proverb that says nothing is good or bad in and of itself. Everything serves its purpose. And I'm not saying that trauma is good and that's something that we embrace, but it is. And so if it is, what can we learn from it and how can we utilize it to help move us toward healing and life enhancement and growth? So I think that's really critical. And that is a part of the notion of healing from an African perspective, the balance, order, and equilibrium. The third thing I wanted to say, and I think this was brought up in terms of our brother who told us that he was having some issues. I know that several of us reached out for, gave him some information, and I hope that I tried to reach out to him again. I did reach out to him earlier. And I think that part of what he said to me is that people give him their numbers and he would like some more reciprocality, so that as we think about what are the things that we can do in our community to help our people, I think part of it is also meeting people and reaching out to people where they are. And I know that many of us do that. I just want to highlight that because the message that he sent back to me was one of, okay, this is all well and good and people are talking and giving me their number. We need to think about, okay, do we reach out? Where else do we go? Again, I know a lot of people are doing that, and I want to affirm that and also just remind us that we have to do that. And it's not always about the talking. And I think Michelle is a fine example of that, as are a number of people who have spoken tonight. So thank you, Obari, for giving me the opportunity to share those sentiments. And thank you, everybody who's on.
Mm-hmm. I got caught up on the issue with the young man that y'all are talking about. He is someone that I do know.
Okay.
And someone has tried to connect us twice for therapy, and he's been invited to our Sunday sessions over and over and over again. So he's aware of opportunities to not just call someone, but to go to a place to seek support. At some point, people also choose to receive the help. So I just wanted to let y'all know that, I do know him. So if y'all nervous about that, like, I'll follow up and make sure that he gets what he needs. But he also might not be ready for it too. So
thank you for sharing that.
I just wanted to say I know people, are worried about him. And not saying don't be, but I'm saying that he's taken care of. I want to wrap this soon. I want to wrap this. Actually, I'm going to call someone on the spot first. And then our final word will be from Michelle Thompkins. I've very deliberately asked her to come to speak as a youth advocate. I kind of suspected that when we opened the floor, we was going to get a lot of elders to speak, which I love. But I also wanted to make sure we were wrapping that circle around and sending us off with some energy and some perspective and some marching orders from the younger generation. So I asked her to come represent that, just to listen in on the conversation, take notes, and then share what she heard and how that connects to her work. But before she does that, we've been talking about Bobby Wright all day. And one of the elders that I know that worked with Bobby Wright, that knows Bobby Wright, that spent time with Bobby Wright, that I wanted to at least hear a little bit from is Elder Inyala. And I just can't end this without hearing from you a little bit and sharing some of your perspectives and insights around what you've seen, how you see this conversation evolving over the generations, some insight around, Bobby Wright's work specifically, and what you think that we need as an organization to do better. And then after you speak, I would like Michelle Tompkins to speak. And then we're going to wrap this thing. I'm going to skip the final reflections from the panelists. Hope y'all weren't waiting. If y'all got something y'all are dying to say that you're waiting for the last moment for, send me a message in the chat and I'll open the floor for that. Dr. Williams, you have something you want to say before we close?
I would like to hear from Dr. Cooper. Let her talk.
Okay, perfect. And then this is my last thing. So I'm not gonna say anything else either. I just want to say our next ABC event is already in the books. There's no flyer yet, but it will be the last for this section of series on the hip hop wellness webinars we've been doing. The topic for June will be spiritual health. We talk about spirituality. We got Dr. Wade Nobles confirmed to come speak. Counselor Shauna Brown Murray from the East Coast, and an artist Bukepper from Chicago. It's going to be a very, very powerful session. June 16th, is Wednesday, 6 to 7:30 virtual. You'll all get the email after this, but I just wanted y'all to put that in your calendars for now. And then we have Dr. Cooper and Michelle Tompkins, and then we are going to close this for the day.
Okay. I think this has been excellent work done here tonight from all of our participants, not just the panelists, but everyone else who has contributed. I want to especially thank Dr. Saafir for leading us into this by looking back and bringing forth the slave stories. And I'm going to use that to close with what Bobby would say about these things. In the slave stories, you hear people taking their own life because they do not want to be beat again. So that they had reached the point in their lives in which the outside threat was greater than their own connection to self. And it is the things that have been brought out by others, and especially our young sister, MzTaty, and others, that we have so much in our connection to one another and in our connection to our ancestors, that if we are able to in any ways hold on to that or see that as the light, then it would help us to value ourselves as part of that. You know, it's I am because we are. That is what has to be ingrained more in our young people. I want to stop because I don't want to go on too long. But basically, many times Bobby would say, we kill ourselves because we have not learned how to kill the enemy. And he was that upfront with it in terms of his language and what he would say and how he would handle it. It is for us to bring the broader clinical interpretation and to dress it up so that we help people understand that they are the value. And it's that, you know, we learn clinically that the act of self-violence, suicide, is done by a person who has lost any sense of self in order to turn against your own self in that way. So we have to help people to connect and reconnect and come back. Any thread that's left there. People do away with themselves because they feel they have nothing left, or they've done so much bad they can't correct it, or those kinds of things, or that there's nothing for them. And that's what we have to bring back, and that's what we have to pull together. So the cultural, especially meeting people where they are, young or old, addicted, sane, insane, that we really have to connect with people in that way to bring about, move away from this business of throwing away a life that's a value. And that's what I feel, and that's what I was glad to be here to be part of tonight. And Bobby is happy with this.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Thank you so very much. Michelle Tompkins, close us out, please.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm really honored and humbled to be joining the conversation. And Dr. Cooper hit it right on the head. I think a lot of the work that I do with the Corner Store is an attempt to disrupt a lot of the conversations around mental health, and in particular to suicide, that says this is a negative or this is a weak choice to make. Many youths feel as though they don't have a voice, or they don't have a space where they can be themselves, where they can truly have someone meet them where they're at. Because in the spaces that they are in, like at home, at school, or even in the community, adults are talking down to them. They're not getting in the mud and they're not meeting them and they're not saying, I see you, I validate you, I want to support you, I want to heal you, I want to let you know of your legacy, and I don't want to remind you of who you are. That's not happening. And it's not happening in a way that is most integrous to you today. And so that's why you see a shift of turning to music and media and out external sources as a means of connection and healing with who they are, and instead of meeting them where they're at. And so I think if we can pivot the way we use our language and the way that we're engaging with our youth, that'll make that much more of a difference. And I think also showing them what are those different coping mechanisms, what are those different outlets. It doesn't take a lot of money to meet somebody where they're at and to tell them, yo, you have access to healing. Let me do this with you. I will do this with you. I will partner with you. You don't have to numb yourself to smoke every day because you feel the pressures and the weight of the world, or because you haven't dealt with a shooting, or you haven't dealt with your best friend taking their own life. Like, let me sit down. Let me have a conversation with you. Let me explain to you that your parents care. Let me explain to you that your teachers and your educators, they care. They may be disconnected, but you're also disconnected too. So how can we find the grace? How can we find the common ground? How can we meet the youth really where they're at and disrupt their day-to-day flow? That's what they're going to pay attention to. That's what they're going to respond to. They're not going to respond to someone saying, stop taking your life, or this is how you don't take your life. They're going to respond to somebody saying, yo, I understand shit is rough. Shit is hard. Speak to them, get into their head and tell them, yo, I see you. I'm holding your hand. If you need me to walk with you to that first session, I will do that with you. I will be there for you. That is the element that we've been talking about that has been missing. That is what our youth need. They need that community. They need somebody who is willing to step outside the box and say, well, the youth, they're so far removed from what's going on in today. Taking a step out of that, being innovative and saying, we're going to try something. If it doesn't work, oh, well, we got another day to get it right. And I think there's so much power in this collective and within this community. And I think we need to step aside from saying, well, this is what we should do, and just do. That's how we disrupt the flow, is just by doing what we say that we want to do. That's how we disrupt the flow, by actually being about it. And I think the more we're consistent with that, and I think the more that we're consistent with creating spaces for youth to tap in, whether it's on the basketball court, whether it's creating a circle of girls doing lashes. You got 20 girls in one room doing lashes together. Let's talk about respecting our bodies. Let's talk about healthy relationships. Let's talk about how WAP is definitely something that you're listening to, but how can your WAP transform you into being the queen that you are? Let's take a minute to take a step back and say, how can I truly look at the kids that are on my block and say, have you had something to eat today? I noticed that that police officer was being aggressive with you. How are you feeling right now? I know that last summer, you and your cousins got into it with the police, so I'm just gonna check up on you. You want some food? How's your family doing? Y'all need whatever you need, come to me, I got you. We got so much wealth here, and I think everyone, because of the pandemic, has been shut off, but we now have an opportunity to open the door and come together and say, let's do this. I don't want to take up too much time. I'm a little all over the place, but I appreciate the opportunity to be present and to talk about what I do. And if you're interested in learning more about what I do, I'll definitely send my information to Dr. Cartman, but I'm here, I'm around, and I'm ready to do the work. I am doing the work. So thank you guys for being here.
Yes. Can we give everyone a Black round of applause? Thank you all for being here tonight, for spending 2 hours talking about depression and suicide. Such a powerful group of people focusing their attention and talents and gifts and resources. I'm confident that we could solve all of these problems. So I'm going to save the chat and make sure that everyone gets a copy of the recording, and please reach out to each other. Stay in tune with Chicago ABSI, with National ABSI. Our national conference is coming up. And there's nothing but work to do. So let's get to it, get some rest, eat some good food, and get back at it tomorrow. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.
Sante sana.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Okay.
Be well, everybody. Thank you.
Blacknificence up in the house. It's been wonderful.
True.
As always.
And thank you,
Have a
Dr.
great
Cartman.
night.
Absolutely.
Thank you, new family friends. Be in touch.
Okay.
Dr. Williams on the west side.
Did she leave already?
Dr. Constance Williams?
Yes, I was trying. She was on the west side. She was going to leave her number.
Oh, she didn't leave a number? I can send you her email.
Yes, sir. That'll be fine.
She worked for the state, so she all over.
She put it in the
Statewide.
chat.
Yeah, she's statewide.
She put it in the chat
She put a
box.
phone number in the
Oh,
chat box.
I missed it. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna save the chat, and everybody will have the whole thing.
Great.
Oh,
Hey, Dr. Bartman.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm saying Bartman. Dr. Cartman.
Yes, Dr. Mitchell.
Can I say a 30-second prayer? I know it's not my usual or your platform, but
You got it. I ain't gonna stop no prayer.
hallelujah. A glorious Father, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, mind regulator, mind reader, one who knows our thoughts from afar off. We come before you now to ask for you to transform our method of thinking. There are times that we see and hear and read your word, but you have created us in your image that we can create, intervene, and prevent. So we pray, God, as we read your word, we will read through the fine lines so that we will able to transform a generation, not seeing ourselves as cursed as it is proclaimed.